Winnie began her own questioning with a sharp series of barks.
"It's just me, Mrs. Buckmaster. Eve Lind. I didn't mean to startle you. Please excuse me."
"Well, you did just that. Startled me, that is. What do you want?" "Shush, Winnie."
"I've been meaning to knock on your door for a visit. I wanted to ask you about Gunnar,"
Eve said as she bent over to pat the dog. But Winnie was having none of it as she backpedaled, stopping behind Mrs. Buckmaster's legs.
"What about him?"
Mrs. Buckmaster said.
"He never came home last night, and I haven't heard from him all day. I know you two have been spending time together in the evenings lately. Did he say anything to you?"
Eve said, taking a step closer. Mrs. Buckmaster didn't answer. She retreated a step and stepped on Winnie's paw. The high-pitched yelp startled both women.
"I'm worried. I'm sure you can understand that,"
Eve said, adding a noticeable quaver in her voice.
"Maybe you should ask those people he works with. They should know, not me."
The lie came to Eve easily.
"I already have. They were no help."
Mrs. Buckmaster shook her head.
"I can't help you."
Eve inched closer.
"You can't, or you won't, Mrs. Buckmaster."
"Actually, Mrs. Lind, if you must know, I won't."
"I see. And why is that?"
Eve said, drawing out the small wax paper packet from her pocket.
"I've heard enough from your husband, you could say."
"And what was that? What did he say?"
"I'm done talking to you. Now leave us alone."
"Did he ever mention anything about a letter or letters?"
Again, Mrs. Buckmaster didn't answer. But when she flinched at the mention of letters, Eve pulled the bacon fat from the packet and tossed it at the woman's feet.
"What is that? What are you doing?"
Winnie wasted no time lapping up the lard. Eve tossed the wax paper on the ground for good measure.
"Stop, Winnie!"
Mrs. Buckmaster yelled as she pulled at the dog's leash.
"It seems that Winnie was hungry. You must not be feeding her enough."
Mrs. Buckmaster pulled at the leash, and Winnie choked several times. With another tug, Mrs. Buckmaster began dragging Winnie away. Eve didn't want to kill the dog. It was just a necessary step. She had debated whether to do it before or after. It had depended on the way Mrs. Buckmaster answered her, and her cold and uninformative replies had made the decision for Eve. Killing the dog in front of the meddlesome landlady suited Eve just fine. Winnie sprawled on her side in the gravel and started convulsing. Her paws spasmodically sprayed the gravel across the path.
"What have you done, you witch?"
Mrs. Buckmaster bent down to tend to the dog. Eve reached inside her coat pocket and pulled out the sock filled with stones the size of chestnuts. It was one of Gunnar's socks. She had bought the pair for him last Christmas. She whipped it around in a tight circle, and it landed on the back of Mrs. Buckmaster's head. The crunching sound would be hard to forget. Blood spattered on the back of Mrs. Buckmaster's coat and Eve's bare legs. Eve rolled over Mrs. Buckmaster's body and placed her index finger under her nostrils. The woman's breathing was evident, but labored. Eve had a cure for that. After all, she was a doctor. She squeezed the woman's nose shut and placed her other hand over Mrs. Buckmaster's mouth. 5 seconds later, Mrs. Buckmaster began to struggle, her legs kicking and her hands tugging on Eve's coat. Eve brought her weight down on the old woman. The struggle was short-lived. Breathing rapidly herself, Eve rose to her feet and ran to a nearby stand of trees to retrieve the shovel she had left there the night before. The rush of adrenaline was liberating. Problem solved. Chapter 1 1400 hours, Monday, October 19, 1942. Government Code and Cipher School, GC and CS. Bletchley Park, Buckinghamshire. The paper-thin walls of Hut 8 failed miserably at keeping the dampness brought on by the steady rains at bay. Alan Turing had his scarf wrapped tightly around his neck and his gloved hands coiled around a tepid cup of tea. He stared across the office at Gunnar Lind's desk. Its surface was a complete mess, just like his. The only difference was that Turing had shown up for work.